The message landed while my kettle clicked off. Family group chat. My brother Liam, of course. He said I shouldn't come to Sunday's cookout because his new wife thought I kill the vibe. Mom reacted with 3 laughing emojis. Dad sent a heart. I stared at the screen, felt the tiny heat from the phone, and typed one word back. Understood. Silence on my end. Not a dramatic silence, just the kind that settles when you finally stop auditioning for people who already picked their favorite. Would you have said anything different? I flipped the phone face down and signed my name where the blue arrows told me. 2 vendor contracts. Sensors, sterilization chambers, a lot of metal, and even more compliance. Numbers that could buy my parents' street twice if I cared to. I'm 35, Senior VP of Product Engineering at Helix Ion MedTech in Austin. We're months from launching a device that could change how small clinics catch the big stuff early. Out there, people guess I'm a lab goblin with a soldering iron. Inside the building with my badge, I'm the one who decides what ships and what dies on the table. I heard the AAC turnover, that soft breath older houses make at night. The kettle went from hot to cold without anyone touching it. I drank water instead of tea and read Liam's text again. The words weren't sharp. They were lazy. Lazy cuts hurt slower, which is why families love them. Mom would later say Sierra didn't mean it. She's just young. Dad would tell me to ignore it for harmony. Harmony always costs the quiet one. I scrolled the thread. Aunt Marie had posted a photo of a flag cake, strawberries, and blueberries arranged like a tidy promise. Under it, a cousin asked if I could bring my famous potato salad. Famous is one word, forgotten is another. I typed nothing. I thought about how often I'd made myself smaller to fit at picnic tables where the seat was already taken. The contracts pinged, signed and countersigned. A clean chime. I locked my laptop and stood in my kitchen, barefoot on cool tile, listening to Austin hum beyond the windows. I could have called Liam. I could have asked why a 27-year-old who met me twice gets to ban me from ribs and bad country music. I could have reminded him who paid his last hospital bill, who lined up the interview when his car shop cut hours, who kept quiet when our mother praised Sierra's entrepreneur spirit with my money in the background. I didn't call. I set a timer in my head instead, because I know patterns. Sierra likes attention, and attention grows loud when it meets a boundary. Liam avoids conflict until conflict kicks down his door. Mom says what keeps the peace in front of neighbors. Dad watches, counts, and files, pretending his hands are clean while his eyes do the work. None of that is new. What's new is that I stopped pretending my place in the family depends on swallowing whatever taste they hand me. I rinsed the glass and let the water run over my fingers longer than necessary. That's a small luxury. Time to feel something on your own terms. Then I set my phone face up, finally. Messages kept blinking, weekend plans, grocery lists, little fireworks. I muted the thread. I bookmarked a note to my assistant. Confirm Monday's engineering run, move Tuesday's vendor call, cut the waste. It's not revenge to organize your life. It's rescue. I used to plead for space at tables that didn't want me seated. These days, when a door closes, I let it stay closed and see who ends up needing the key. It isn't cruel. It's math. And tomorrow, the math would balance itself in a very public way. The house settled again. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped. I pictured the Helix Ion lobby, the glass that carries sound like gossip, the logo that makes strangers stand taller when they see it. I don't write speeches. I don't perform the myth of the nice girl executive. I work. I sign. I deliver. Tomorrow morning, a woman would scream loud enough for an entire floor of engineers to hear. I already knew which one. The elevator dinged at 9:20 a.m. That bright hotel bell sound that says, incoming. I was reviewing a sterilization variance when my desk phone lit up. Kendra's voice stayed calm, like it always does when the building gets interesting. A woman downstairs refused to give her name, said she needed the person who handles angel investments. She added that it was urgent. She also added that her husband was with her. I looked at my reflection in the black glass of the monitor and counted to 3. Ever met someone who performs confidence until the room introduces the truth? Send them up, I told Kendra. No badge, no bag, and if they argue, escort them out. I closed the variants, straightened the contracts, and placed my pen parallel to the brass nameplate. Senior VP, Product Engineering. The floor outside my door hummed, printers, low chatter, the soft white noise rush of conditioned air. Through the glass wall, the Helix Ion logo floated in brushed steel, the way a ship's name floats above water. I took a breath and let my body fall into the stillness I use when rooms turn volatile. Stillness travels faster than panic. The glass doors on the executive level slid open with a whisper. She entered first. Emerald dress. Oversized sunglasses pushed into glossy hair like a crown. Sierra Monroe Crestwood walked like she expected a camera to catch the angle. Behind her, Liam in a faded t-shirt and clean jeans, eyes on the floor as if he could dodge attention by staring at tile. They froze when they saw me behind the desk. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, like a string being plucked and held in the air. Sierra's hand lifted to adjust the sunglasses that didn't need adjusting. Her fingers misjudged. The frame slipped. Plastic kissed marble, one small, sharp note that carried farther than it should have. Dana, she whispered, and my name came out like she'd just found a snake under a picnic table. Her gaze drifted from my face to the nameplate, to the title, to the logo behind me and back. The performance wobbled. Liam finally looked up. "Is this your office?" His voice had the weight of a child seeing the ocean for the first time and realizing it doesn't care who he is. "It is," I said. My tone stayed level, same register I use for design reviews that can't afford heat. "What do you need?" Sierra tried on a smile like a pair of shoes she hadn't bought yet. "Too tight." "We're here for a quick conversation," she said, scanning the seating like she owned time. "Family matter. 5 minutes." Her eyes cataloged the square footage, the view, the quiet wealth that doesn't need to introduce itself. Attention is a drug. Silence is how you test for dependence. Kendra appeared at the threshold, professional, present, not intrusive. She placed water on the side table and stood where she could witness without becoming part of the scene. Sierra clocked her and looked away, preferring the audience behind the glass, engineers at long tables, screens reflecting blues and graphs, faces turning neutral when they felt eyes on them. "You learn to keep your expression flat around glass." I gestured to the 2 chairs and didn't move from mine. Power is sometimes as simple as not standing up when someone expects you to. Liam sat. Sierra didn't. "Control needs height." "You said angel investments," I said. "You also refused to give your name downstairs." She cleared her throat, then tilted her chin, an actress finding her light. "We're building something revolutionary," she began. "A point-of-care diagnostics platform." The words sounded rented. She held them like borrowed luggage. Liam nodded quickly, eager to agree with whatever came next. His knee bounced, the old tell from childhood whenever a grown-up asked him a direct question. I remembered how I used to place a hand on that knee under restaurant tables to remind him to breathe. I kept my hands on my desk now. "Before we talk," I said, "clarify one thing." I let the quiet grow until it had edges. "Why did you arrive at my job unannounced on a holiday weekend?" Sierra blinked, like the teleprompter stalled. "Because family looks after family," she said finally, each word polished, none of them warm. There it was, the script. I didn't look at Kendra, but I felt her watching the temperature of the room. Outside, 2 engineers paused at the printer and pretended to read a test sheet. The elevator side closed, somewhere down the hall. I rested my fingertips on the brass again. "Understood," I said. "Then let's be clear in front of family." I leaned back. I gave the silence 1 more inch. And I asked the question that would pry the room open and flood it with whatever they'd brought to my door. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" She set the pitch deck on my desk like dessert at a church potluck, colorful, oversweet, and hoping you won't ask what's inside. Glossy cover. A logo that looked suspiciously like 3 other logos glued together. Sierra's smile brightened to stage lighting. "We're raising 2.4, she announced, letting the number sparkle in the air. "Family gets in first. Founder-friendly terms." 2.4 what? She didn't say dollars. She said status. Liam jumped in fast, like he'd practiced on the drive. He said it was a sure thing, that I finally had the means, that this was what family meant. My brother has kind eyes. It makes manipulation look like honesty. I kept my voice level. No. Sierra didn't hear it. People like her treat the first no like a room warmer. She started walking me through slides, market size, hockey stick chart, celebrity advisors who mysteriously lacked last names. When she paused for oxygen, I repeated myself. No. The smile slipped. Not off, down. Her jaw tightened the way glass tightens when you pour boiling water into a cold cup. So you're jealous, she said softly, the softness that precedes a slap. You sit up here in a glass throne and you can't stand that I'm building something real. Through the wall, two engineers froze mid-walk, then pretended to discuss color calibration at a printer. Glass makes excellent theater and terrible privacy. You showed up uninvited at my job, I said. On a holiday weekend. You asked for millions with no appointment, no diligence, and no respect for time. I let the silence walk around the room and touch everything it wanted. The answer is still no. She raised her voice. Not to me, to the floor. Do you all hear this? She spread her arms to the glass. Miss Senior VP doesn't care about family. She just cares about her title and her empty bed. The floor didn't move. They're engineers. They care about failing tests and coffee temperatures. Still, the air shifted. Curious. Tense. A light on the nearest conference room blinked from green to red as someone inside extended their meeting to avoid the hallway. I felt Kendra at my shoulder before I saw her, quiet, grounded, a presence like a closed door between me and chaos. Ma'am, she said to Sierra, keeping it polite and flat, you'll need to lower your voice. Sierra laughed, a high note that tried to sound expensive. Call security, she said, waving one dismissive hand. Let's see how that looks when the family lawyers get involved. Two officers were already gliding down the hall, summoned by decibel, not request. They knew the building's rhythm. They knew when a note didn't belong. They didn't touch anyone. They didn't need to. Time to go, one said, gentle as a librarian. He angled toward the elevator with the practiced patience of people who escort ego for a living. Liam stood too quickly, bumping the chair. Dana, just 5 minutes. She's got traction. He wanted me to save him from the scene he brought to my door. That used to be my hobby. I retired. Sierra's sunglasses lay on the marble like a confession. She snatched them up, stabbing the temples into her hair like armor. You'll regret this, she told me, pointing, but her eyes skipped to the nameplate again, as if reading it might change the letters. We're family. UOS. I didn't stand. Power sometimes looks like staying seated when the room begs you to rise. No one is a thief, I said, and the word landed between us like a dropped wrench. Her face flashed shock, then heat. The officers guided her toward the doors. She tossed one last line over her shoulder, something about lawsuits and blacklisting, and how I'd be sorry when her app saved lives. The glass slid closed on the speech. The elevator answered with a soft bell. Their footsteps faded. Kendra exhaled first. Eventful Saturday, she said, tone dry enough to curl paper. I looked at the deck and flipped it open. Slide 1. Sierra as sole founder. No CTO, no clinical advisor, no regulatory plan. A burn chart that ignored FDA timelines like they were optional weather. Buzzwords in bold, numbers in fog. I turned one more page, then another. My name didn't appear, but I could feel the outline where she wanted to write it. I fed the deck into the shredder. The blades hummed with the calm satisfaction of boundaries being honored. Strips curled into a neat thin green, white, promise, lie. Kendra watched the paper rain and didn't comment. She didn't need to. Some art critiques are better silent. My phone buzzed face down on the desk. Once, then twice. A third time, different pattern. Texts pile like leaves. Real trouble has its own vibration. I flipped it over. Family group chat lighting up with shock emojis from people who hadn't seen anything. Missed calls from Liam. And, above those, a new notification from my bank app, bright banner, cheery font. Pre-approval, $575,000. Cosigner, Dana Crestwood. My thumb hovered over the alert. I felt the hum of the AC, heard the soft clatter of keys outside as the floor pretended to return to normal. Kendra caught my eye, reading the change in my face the way good assistants read weather. I locked the screen instead. Not yet. First, I slid Sierra's shredded deck to the side and opened my notebook. I wrote 2 words, no contact. Then I underlined them twice. Would you have opened the alert right then, or waited to see how loud the day planned to get? The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 4 calls from Liam. I let them die. The 5th one I took, because there's a point where silence just gives the abuser more room. He didn't breathe. He accused. I humiliated Sierra in front of everyone. She was sobbing in the car. I could have given them 5 minutes. I didn't have to sick security on family. I listened to weather loud, useless, passing. When he paused, I asked if he had anything else. He hung up. Texts arrived instantly, a hailstorm. I killed their future, enjoy my cold office, I'll die alone. My bank notification still glowed like a cheerful lie. I opened it. Pre-approval, $575,000 personal loan. Borrowers, Liam Crestwood and Sierra Monroe Crestwood. Cosigner, Dana Crestwood. Application timestamped 2:13 a.m. Income, my public comp package. Address, my condo. Documents, 2 pay stubs I once left at my parents' house after a mortgage refi. Someone had been busy while I slept. Would you call the bank first or call your mother? I called my banker. Ethan Cole answers like a pilot, calm, clipped, already scanning the panel. I told him what I was seeing. He asked 2 questions. I gave 2 answers. Then he moved. Cancel the application. Mark it fraudulent. Hard deny. Freeze any new loan activity tied to my information for the next 110 days. My voice stayed flat because panic wastes oxygen. He processed in real time. I heard his keys like rain. He put a fraud note on my file and a block on any credit pull that didn't include my voice on a recorded line. He said a confirmation would hit my inbox within minutes, and it did, clean, precise, the kind of email that makes lawyers smile. I forwarded it to Liam without commentary. The read receipt popped, then another call came in. I let it ring out. Then Sierra's number flashed. I answered on speaker and let silence be the first word. Silence unsettles performers. She went sweet first. Family helps family. It's not fraud if I love you. 575 grand is pocket change to a VP in a glass castle. She'd explain it to Ruth and Tom, because I clearly didn't understand how families build together. Forged consent is still forged, I said. My voice felt like a level table. If you plan to tell my parents a story, include the theft attempt. Include the timestamp. Include the part where you used pay stubs you took from their house. Her tone hardened. Threats about defamation, about blacklisting, about the ways I'd regret closing a door on opportunity. She tried Liam's name like a weapon. Then she laughed and told me I was dramatic. You're lonely, Dana. That's all this is. You're projecting, Sierra, I said. And I'm documenting. I ended the call. For a minute the room was just machine hum, the air system's steady draw, the thin whir of the shredder cooling down, the floor outside resettling after a show. Kendra stepped in, saw my face, and didn't ask questions. She brought me coffee strong enough to stand a spoon and set it down like a vote of confidence. I opened a blank note and wrote my next steps in rows. Pull all 3 credit reports, place extended fraud alerts, freeze credit, notify every lender I've ever touched, lock my SSA and IRS accounts, switch 2-factor from SMS to app, change the P.O. box for personal mail, alert legal. Rescue isn't revenge. It's housekeeping with teeth. Another text from Liam buzzed across the screen. Sierra says you'll ruin us. Hope you're happy. I archived it because I don't keep garbage on my desktop. I don't enjoy being the bad guy in other people's delusions, but I can live with it. Boundaries turn you into a villain in the stories of people who benefit from your lack of them. That's math. By late afternoon, Summit First had already flagged the application across their internal system. Ethan's follow-up said fraud and recovery would review the metadata and likely send a cost recovery demand to the applicants. I forwarded that line to myself and to my attorney's general inbox with the subject, "Paper trail begins." I gathered my bag at dusk. The building glowed a gentle blue, the way labs do when the day hands the night its keys. I felt tired in a clean way, like after a long swim where you remember your body belongs to you. Tonight I'd freeze everything. Tomorrow I'd tell exactly no one. And by evening, a thick brown envelope would be waiting at my door, addressed only to me. That night became paperwork and passwords. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen that didn't quit. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, one by one, I pulled the reports. Then the extended alerts. 8 years. A wall with teeth. I froze my credit so hard the ice sang. I called every lender I'd ever touched and left the same instruction in careful voicemails: deny anything without my voice on a recorded line. I swapped every two-factor code from text to an app. I locked my Social Security account, flipped on IRS protections, and moved my personal mail to a private box I never share. Boring heroics save lives. No orchestra. Just clicks. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator's low hum and a neighbor's dog tapping across tile. I highlighted each bureau page, looking for footprints. Sierra always wore heels to events, but she left flats in the numbers, inquiries that didn't belong, addresses I never used, a soft pull tied to a regional lender I didn't recognize. I wrote the date, the time, and the lender's initials in the margin. Patterns felt like handholds. By the time I exhaled, midnight had that clear, empty sound. I shut off the lights and opened the door to get air from the hall. That's when I saw it on the mat, a brown envelope the size of a thin book, my name typed on a white label. No return address. The edges were blunt, the weight precise. Truth has a particular gravity. I brought it inside and set it on the table. I didn't tear it open. I cut it with the tip of the pen, slow, like I was unwrapping something that could bite. Inside, a clipped stack of paper, 50 pages thick, stamped Private Investigator Report in block letters. On top, a note scribbled on the back of an old electric bill, the kind with a glossy triangle where a stamp used to sit. Tom's handwriting is a lineman's handwriting, steady, practical, betrayed by a shake he pretends is age. He said he'd been worried for months. He didn't know how to bring it up without blowing up the house. He trusted me to handle it. He was sorry for the way things looked. He asked me not to tell Ruth. She would pick peace and hate herself later. I held the paper and felt an old ache thud once, then go still. My father, quiet as always, had done what he knows. He watched, counted, and filed. He'd chosen me to carry the file the last mile. I read Sierra's name at the top, followed by aliases and the clean lines of official tone. The investigator traced a marriage in Atlanta to a man named Jordan Pike. He had brown-eyed optimism and a small business loan. 8 credit cards later, he had neither. The report listed balances that stacked like bricks. $250,000 in revolving debt. A house that slipped into foreclosure. A truck the bank took back before winter. I turned a page and saw his credit score sag into the high 500s, a number that sits like a locked door. There were screenshots, messages where Sierra pushed for just one more card, just until the product launched, just until investor money cleared, just until the supplier wired back. Just can be a knife if you hold it the wrong way. I flipped to the current section. Dates from this spring. Liam's name threaded through application PDFs and bank transfers. Personal loans labeled as home renovations and business equipment. $17,000 here. $52,000 there. Another chunk, another reason. The money flowed like water downhill, right into Sierra's accounts. The investigator circled transfers at 2:07 a.m. and 3:41 a.m. Times when a house sleeps and predators don't. My pen scratched. Totals climbed. Approximately $170,000 in new loans bearing Liam's signature. Approximately $230,000 in revolving debt under Sierra alone. If numbers could smoke, the room would have been gray. I thought about Liam's knee bouncing at my office, about the way he scanned for cues like a kid searching for a lighthouse. I thought about Mom's group chat emojis and how harmony sounds when it drowns one voice to save the chorus. At what point do you stop calling it love and start calling it theft? The last page held 2 details like nails. First, a forwarding address for Jordan Pike's current apartment and a working phone number. Second, a note that Sierra had recently inquired about short-term commercial rentals in 2 Austin zip codes, likely co-working for optics. She was staging a company in public while siphoning in private. It was clever if you didn't care who bled. The fridge kicked off. The apartment exhaled. I turned Tom's note over again, reread the part where he asked me to keep him out of it until I had facts. He knew what taking my side would cost him with Ruth. He sent the file anyway. I opened my laptop and wrote one email. Subject line, Sierra Monroe, quick question. I kept the body short and clean, offered a time window, and attached nothing. If Jordan needed to speak, he would. If he didn't, I'd find another path. The reply came before I finished washing the single coffee cup in my sink. He said he'd fly in on his own dime. No money. No promises. Just 5 honest minutes to look another stranger in the eye and confirm that he wasn't crazy. I sent him an address and a time for Sunday evening. The Round Rock house. The one Liam believed was his because I never corrected him. I pulled a certified copy of the deed from my files and tucked it into a folder with fresh tabs. Paper tells better stories than people under stress. I slid Tom's note into the front pocket and sealed the folder with a piece of blue tape. Then I set it at the edge of the table where I couldn't miss it on my way out the door. Outside, the hall light buzzed like a tired fly. I locked the deadbolt and leaned my forehead against the cool wood for one slow breath. Tomorrow would be another ordinary day, right up until it wasn't. Somewhere over Georgia, a man was booking a cheap ticket to Austin with a screenshot of 8 maxed cards in his phone. And somewhere across town, Sierra was sleeping like a woman who still believed she could outrun paper. The clock started. He was easy to spot at arrivals. One carry-on, one folder, eyes that had learned to ration hope. Jordan shook my hand like someone who used to trust people and was relearning the skill muscle by muscle. We didn't waste words. The drive north was a ribbon of highway and yellow sodium light. He stared out the window while I watched the speedometer and the clock. Round Rock looked washed and quiet after a late sprinkle. Liam's subdivision repeated itself neat as graph paper. Same porches, same mailboxes, same promise that nothing chaotic could happen here. Chaos loves cul-de-sacs. You can't outrun it, you can only circle. I parked in front of the house my brother called his. Porch light on. A citronella candle guttered in a glass cup, throwing a tired halo. I felt the deed in the folder against my leg, the blue tape edge catching when I shifted. Not yet, I told myself. Truth lands better when it has witnesses and paper. Liam opened on the second knock. He blinked, then did a quick scan over my shoulder like he could reorder the night by checking for cameras. His voice tried for neutral and didn't make it. He asked what I wanted. I told him we needed 10 minutes. He started to say Sierra was tired, then Jordan stepped into the doorway light. You can watch realization climb a face in real time. It starts in the pupils. Liam's widened, then his jaw softened as if his body was giving him permission to feel the truth before his brain allowed it. He stepped back without arguing. That was new. Inside smelled like laundry detergent and a diffuser trying to sell eucalyptus. Sierra had colonized the living room with soft blankets and 2 ring lights leaned against an unused bookshelf. She wore leggings and an oversized hoodie, hair pulled into a perfect ponytail, phone in one hand, power on the other. She glanced up, saw me, and smiled like we were playing house. Then she saw Jordan. Color drains faster in real life than in film. It left her face in a swift tide, and for one raw second she looked young, 27, out of depth, out of script. Then the actor returned. She called it an ambush. She said we were cruel. She said this was harassment. She said a lot of words that sound big until paper enters a room. Jordan placed the folder gently on the coffee table. The gesture had care built into it, the way you set down a box of ashes. He didn't make a speech. He slid out one stack, court-stamped bankruptcy schedules with both their signatures. 8 maxed cards. A foreclosure. A repossession. He didn't explain the numbers. He let the ink do the violence. Sierra glanced once, then chose the ceiling. People who live by spin hate stillness. Stillness takes away the stage. She blamed the market, the timing, the toxic investors, the ex who misunderstood her vision. Jordan didn't look at her. He scrolled his phone and laid down screenshots like playing cards, messages about just one more card, bridge cash, and rewards points. The timestamps lined up with transfers from the PI's report. The phrasing lined up with things Liam had parroted to me on the phone. Liam sat. He didn't perform outrage. He didn't defend. He read. Hands flat on his thighs, eyes tracking line to line like he was learning a new language called consequences. I watched his knee. It didn't bounce. Somewhere in the house a fridge motor kicked on and hummed, obligingly normal. I narrated in a plain voice. The investigators' findings. The $170,000 in new loans in his name. The $230,000 revolving under Sierra. The 2 transfers. The co-working inquiries for optics. I kept it clinical because the facts were already violent enough. Would you have softened any of it? Sierra pivoted. Tears fast, shiny, perfectly suspended. She reached for Liam's hand and spoke into his shoulder like cameras were rolling. She said Jordan was bitter. She said old mistakes don't predict the future. She said she loved Liam in a way I could never understand because I was married to my title. She said family builds or dies. Jordan didn't rise. He touched the bankruptcy pages with 2 fingers, like confirming they were still real. When he finally spoke, it was a quiet apology to me, not to her, for not seeing it sooner, for letting it happen long enough that another man could be standing in the same room years later with the same wreckage mapping onto his life. Liam asked a small question I almost didn't catch. Did she use the same lines with you? Jordan nodded once. He scrolled to a message where Sierra promised that investor funds clear next week if he could just cover another supplier invoice today. Then he scrolled to one where she laughed at a bank's fraud warning, said, "They always do that." Sierra exhaled hard and tried anger again. She called Jordan a liar. She called me a jealous bully. She told Liam I never wanted him happy. She said the bank email was a misunderstanding and that real founders push the envelope. I could have debated entrepreneurship ethics. I didn't. The only envelope that mattered tonight was the one my father had sent with a shaking blue pen. I opened my folder. Not the deed yet. I laid down the fraud denial confirmation from Summit first, minus the internal notes, but with the bolded line about the application being marked criminal referral eligible. Liam read that one twice. Sierra's eyes flicked to the door like she could leave the consequences in the room if she moved fast enough. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to check it to know our family group chat was waking up somehow, somewhere, Ruth triangulating, Aunt Marie rehearsing a moral. I turned the phone face down on my thigh without looking, emotions so practiced it felt like a reflex. Then I asked Liam a question I had never asked him out loud. Did he want a life where his name meant something clean again? Not to me. To banks. To shops. To himself when he looked in a mirror and tried to steady his hands for delicate work. He looked at Sierra's perfect ponytail and then at his own shoes. He whispered that he didn't know how to fix this. Sierra squeezed his arm and told him there was nothing to fix if I would stop attacking us. She turned to me and tried authority, told me I had no right to bring strangers into her home. I almost laughed. This wasn't her home. It was a set she'd decorated. I felt the edge of blue tape again. Patience. Precision. Mercy doesn't mean hiding the truth. It means timing it so it lands where change can still happen. When does a pattern stop being bad luck and start being design? I told Liam I would give him a path and that it would be fair. Sierra snapped that she wouldn't sign anything. I hadn't offered papers. Not yet. I said the next part would be simple. It would also be final. Jordan closed his folder and stood. We left them on the couch with the citronella candle throwing soap opera light across the room and the ring lights staring at nothing like stunned eyes. On the porch, the night smelled like wet grass and electric lines. Jordan asked if I needed anything else. I told him he'd already given me everything. He nodded, a man who finally found someone else who could see the same map. I walked to the car and sat with my hands on the wheel, breathing until my pulse matched the steady tick of the cooling engine. Then I opened my calendar and counted forward with my thumb. 36 days. The clock started at 8:42 p.m. Sunday night. They just didn't know it yet. Paper hit wood. The room went small. I set the certified deed in the center of their coffee table and turned it so Liam could read the name that mattered. Mine. No mortgage under his. No co-ownership. No we. A simple rectangle of ink that rearranged gravity. Sierra reached for it like it might smudge. She scanned, blinked twice, then laughed too loudly, the way people do when the joke isn't funny and the audience is gone. You wouldn't, she said to the ceiling. She never speaks to me when she's scared. She performs to the rafters. Liam's lips moved as he traced the lines. You can watch denial fight comprehension. It's a quiet battle, all pupils and breath. He swallowed. So, the house is mine, I said. My tone stayed gentle. Mercy isn't the same as softness. I bought it 4 years ago so you wouldn't worry about rent. I kept the payments invisible on purpose. I won't keep them invisible anymore. I took out the second page, my email thread with Bishop, Lane, and Carter. Then the third, draft language ending all financial support. I placed them beside the deed like knives beside a map. I've turned off autopay on the mortgage, I said, opening my banking app and tapping until the green light went gray. I let them watch the switch slide. You'll receive a formal notice tomorrow morning. You have 36 days to move out. Any damage becomes a court problem. Sierra's head snapped toward me. The smile cracked. You can't evict family. You're not my tenant, I said, calm as a level surface. You're a guest whose welcome is over. The notice reflects that. She tried anger, then pity, then seduction by syllable, the full carousel. This is a tantrum. You're punishing us because you're lonely. Liam, tell her. Her voice softened around his name like it was currency that could still buy something. He looked at the deed again. Then at me. Dana, don't do this. The words were small, the way a child's plea shrinks when he knows the door is already shutting. I'm not doing this to you, I said. I'm stopping what's being done with my name. I looked at Sierra and let the silence carry the rest. Jordan stood in the threshold, already a ghost in this story, already free. He didn't gloat. He just watched Liam the way a diver watches another diver surface, counting seconds, listening for breath. Sierra grabbed her phone and started typing with manic precision. Threats. Lawyers. A cousin who does real estate. She said the market would punish me. She said investors would hear I sabotage builders. She builds like an arsonist builds fire. I slid one last page onto the pile, Summit First's fraud denial, with that neat line about civil and criminal referral. Liam read it twice and didn't blink the second time. His knee finally bounced. 36 days, I repeated, softer now. I'll have movers here on day 35 if you need a list. Don't test me on day 37. He covered his face with both hands and breathed in pieces. The fridge motor clicked off. The house exhaled. Somewhere outside, a sprinkler started ticking. Sierra straightened, chin high. We're not going anywhere, she announced to the ring lights. This is a stunt. Then you'll get the paperwork, I said. And the sheriff who serves it. Ruth will never forgive you, she shot back. She'll forgive the person who writes the narrative first, I said. You're fast with stories. I'm faster with documents. That landed. For once, her eyes came to mine and stayed. She saw I wasn't performing. I was finishing. I gathered my copies, left theirs, and stood. 36 days, I said again, not for emphasis, for clarity. After that, banks and courts speak louder than sisters. Liam caught my wrist like he used to when we were little and storms got loud. Can you help me fix this? He didn't say leave her. He didn't say stay. He said the only honest thing left. I am, I said. You just can't feel it yet. On the porch, the night smelled like wet concrete and citronella. Jordan walked ahead to the car, but I paused and looked back through the window. 2 figures on a couch, one scrolling for weapons made of words, one staring at a deed like it was the first mirror he'd ever trusted. My phone vibrated before the engine turned over. Liam again. Then Ruth. Then Aunt Marie Shortcake. I faced the screen down and slid it into the console. Would answering help anyone tonight, or just feed the fire? Back home, I showered the scene off my skin and set fresh sheets like a ceremony. I forwarded the draft letter to my attorney with one word: proceed. Then I scheduled it to send at 7:02 a.m. in case Courage needed a small head start. I also queued a note to Kendra, block unknowns. No appointments for family. Move legal to priority. At midnight, the messages broke the lock screen like hail. Liam oscillated. Rage, apology, bargaining, despair. Sierra sent paragraphs that read like closing arguments written by a mood swing. She called me a monster and a mentor in the same breath. She threatened to tell the entire family I'd stolen from Liam. Then she begged for just a bridge month. I typed nothing. I put the phone in a drawer and shut it with my palm, firm enough that the wood answered. Quiet arrived like a friend who knows your code. Somewhere around 1, I woke to the phantom buzz that happens when a body expects war. I walked to the kitchen and poured water, cold enough to bite. In the window, my reflection looked like someone I'd finally met on purpose, a woman who doesn't confuse surrender with kindness. I opened my laptop for the last task. I created a simple document, bullet points, dates, amounts, contact names. If the next days exploded, I wanted facts within reach. The header read, 36-day plan. Line 1, notice sent, 7:02 a.m. Line 2, bank fraud and recovery, Lupin Council. Line 3, family comms, none. When the sun started hinting at the edges, Austin turned that dull silver it wears before heat takes over. I brewed coffee and watched steam rise like a promise to myself. At 7:02, the email left my outbox with a clean whoosh. Sierra could stage whatever show she wanted today. Ruth could gather emojis like hymnals. Aunt Marie could rehearse a parable. The only sound I planned to hear was the letter landing in their inboxes and the clock ticking down from 36. Some consequences walk. Some arrive certified. Which one would they open first? The whoosh left my outbox at 7:02 a.m. clean. Final. The formal notice from Bishop, Lane, and Carter laid everything out. 36 days to vacate, no more payments, fixtures stay, damage equals court. Paper doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. By 7:14, Sierra replied to my corporate email from her phone, 3 paragraphs of charm and contempt braided tight. She called the notice a pathetic bluff, said I would never make my baby brother homeless, and promised to watch me explain this tantrum to Ruth and Tom at the cookout. She added 2 winking emojis, as if law were a party trick. I forwarded her message to counsel with one word, proceed. Kendra arrived with her coffee and a list. I told her to route unknown numbers to voicemail and hold the line if anyone used the word family to skip process. She nodded once, already building the quiet around me that lets work breathe. At 8:03, Summit First Bank's fraud and recovery dropped the hammer. A pre-litigation demand, addressed to Liam and Sierra, with me copied. They itemized internal costs, roughly $13,500, and set a deadline for payment. They included a sentence in that clean bank tone about potential civil action in Travis County and a referral to the district attorney for felony identity theft if unpaid. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Sierra without commentary. Some truths sound better in other people's fonts. The floor outside my office kept its engineer rhythm, keystrokes, printer spools, soft shoe squeaks. Inside, my phone went from polite to feral. Liam called, then texted. I was killing their future, destroying his marriage, proving I never cared. He begged, then threatened, then begged again, flipping through emotions like TV channels. Aunt Marie woke the family thread with a Bible verse pasted over a sunrise. She wrote that money is a test and that successful daughters must stay humble. Ruth followed with a voice note about keeping peace and not embarrassing the family. Tom stayed silent. Silence can be a confession if you know how to hear it. Ever notice how people who preach harmony forget laws exist? Kendra stepped in, face composed. Security had flagged a woman arguing with the receptionist about angel investments, but it was a false alarm. Not Sierra, just someone who loved buzzwords. We both exhaled. At 10:27, Sierra found a new gear. She wrote that she'd spoken to a lender friend who said my fraud claim was overblown. She said the $575,000 was leveraging family credit, not theft. She said the bank would back down if I rescinded my drama. She copied Ruth, who reacted with a heart. Hearts are easy. Boundaries are not. I responded once, short and surgical. Do not contact my workplace again. All communications through counsel. Then I muted her thread and moved the folder on my desk into the center of my vision. Inside the folder, the deed, a mortgage statement, the signed 36-day notice, Jordan's bankruptcy packet, and the fraud letter from Summit First. Paper that could stand in a yard and speak louder than any performance. At lunch, I ate standing by the window and watched the heat start to flatten Austin's skyline. Sierra's next email arrived while I chewed. See you at the cookout. She added that she couldn't wait to watch me grovel to our parents and admit this was all a misunderstanding. She attached an invite image with flags and sparklers, the kind of cheerful graphic that looks like it can cover anything. I sent the file to my printer and listened to it slide out warm. I placed it on top of the deed. Kendra glanced at the stack and then at me. You're going, she asked without asking. I'm done hiding, I said. My voice sounded like a door clicking shut on purpose. By mid-afternoon, Summit's auto system confirmed receipt of their demand by both Liam and Sierra. Another message pinged. Liam had tried to open a new store credit line at a home improvement chain. Denied. My fraud alert worked. The alert sounded like a small bell only I could hear. The family chat kept bleeding. Cousins performed morality in paragraphs. Ruth asked me to come early to talk privately. Sierra posted a boomerang from their kitchen, twirling tongs like she'd already won a game that hadn't started. Liam texted me a photo of his wedding band in his palm with a line about, whatever you want me to do. He wanted instructions instead of responsibility. I didn't reply. I shut my laptop at 5 with the calm you earn by refusing to chase fires. The folder fit cleanly into a plain tote. On top, I added one more page, Bishop, Lane and Carter's cover letter summarizing consequences if day 37 arrived with anyone still inside my house. In the garage, the air felt like a hairdryer. I stood beside my car and breathed once, deep enough to find my spine again. Would showing up make me the villain in their story, or the historian in mine? I slid behind the wheel and set the tote on the passenger seat. The first address in my GPS was muscle memory, New Braunfels. My parents' backyard. A grill that always burns the first batch and a long folding table where truth could finally stop whispering. If they wanted a show, I would bring a ledger. Country music leaked from a Bluetooth speaker while the grill complained in smoke. New Braunfels heat pressed every shirt to every back. Neighbors drifted between paper plates and folding chairs, doing that polite nod people do when they think nothing truly bad can happen in a backyard. Sierra stood at the grill beside my dad like a campaign ad, white sundress, straw hat, tongs twirling. Ruth floated, greeting guests, curating harmony with her smile. I carried a plain tote past the lemonade and the flag cake and stopped at the long picnic table with the checkered cloth. Paper weighs more than food. I set the manila folder down between potato salad and coleslaw. Then I opened it. First, the deed. My name. Round Rock Property. I smoothed it flat with 2 fingers so the son could read it. Then the 36-day notice, bold line about vacating, signatures where signatures belong. Next, the mortgage statement with auto payoff and the acceleration clause highlighted in yellow. On top of those, a pre-foreclosure notice dated this morning, fresh ink, no drama. Paper doesn't raise its voice. It never needs to. Conversations thinned. Plastic cups paused midair. Liam walked up with a plate and dropped it when he saw the spread. The sound was small, but it cut through the music like a wrong note. He stared at the deed as if staring could change nouns into wishes. Sierra arrived 2 beats later, smile already weaponized. She called me dramatic. She said this belonged inside, where adults talked. She said I was jealous, bitter, alone. Then she turned to the crowd like a host recovering a party and announced I was having a moment. I didn't look at her. I let the pages talk. I slid Jordan's bankruptcy packet to the center, 8 cards, 1 foreclosure, 1 repossession, names matched, signatures matched. I placed Summit First's fraud demand on top, the sentence about district attorney referral crisp as a warning label. Ruth appeared at my elbow with a hostess smile fixed too tight. She whispered about keeping the peace, about not embarrassing the family, about neighbors. She reached for the papers like she might bundle them up and store them with the good linens. No, I said, not loud, just final. Everyone here defended what they didn't understand. They can watch it breathe. Tom stood back with his hands in his pockets, looking like a man who knows power lines and when not to touch them. His eyes were the only apology I expected today. Liam folded. Knees to grass, hands open, the plate forgotten in the dust. He begged me not to do this here, not like this, not where everyone could see. He promised change in words that had never bought anything. He said he could fix it if I stopped right now. I bent just enough that he could hear me without making a scene of my voice. I told him I was done paying for other people's fiction. I told him love without boundaries was a scam, and I was finished financing it. I told him he stopped being my brother the day he let Sierra use my name to steal. Sierra tried to laugh it off. Her laugh went brittle, then broke. She swiped at the papers and made a speech about family being thicker than water, about powerful women helping other women, about how my title had made me cold. She called me heartless. People nodded because nodding is easier than thinking. I pointed to dates. I traced lines with one calm finger. I read a number and then another until silence replaced opinions. Aunt Marie opened her mouth to deliver a verse. I set the pre-foreclosure notice on her plate and let the yellow highlight answer. Would you have pulled the plug in front of everyone, or spared their pride and kept paying for it? Ruth's voice sharpened. She asked me to hand the folder over. She said we'd deal with this after. She asked me to behave like family. I looked at Tom. He met my eyes once and looked down. He knew this was the after. Sierra grabbed the fraud letter and waved it like a prop, saying bank's bluff, saying I'd fabricated, saying her company would clear everything once investors wired. The crowd shifted, hungry for any story that left the burgers unburned and the afternoon intact. I didn't argue. I placed my phone on the table and tapped the screen. The email from Summit first sat open with headers, timestamps, case number. Then I slid my father's note, his shaky blue ink, from the folder's side pocket and set it face down. Some truths are private even when everything else is public. Liam whispered that he'd leave her if I stopped. That he'd do anything if I pulled the notice. He cried into his hands, loud enough that the music felt cruel. He wanted rescue without the cost. No, I said again. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just done. Grease flared on the grill behind us. Meat burned. The afternoon tilted from party to wake without anyone naming it. My mother finally told me to get off her property if I couldn't be nice. I told her niceness had bankrupted enough people. I gathered my copies and slid them into the tote. The originals stayed where they lay, catching sun, catching breath, catching every eye that had ever rolled at my odd career and my cold demeanor. Sierra shouted something about lawyers and slander and how I would regret this. Liam sobbed a promise that had no nouns left to hold it up. I walked through the stunned crowd and out the side gate. Behind me, the speaker kept playing a cheerful song that didn't fit the room anymore. Smoke followed me down the driveway like a clingy memory. At the curb, I paused and looked back once. Paper glowed on the checkered cloth. My brother knelt in the grass. My mother held a smile like a broken plate. My father watched the horizon line like weather was coming. 36 days were already shrinking. Day 37 doesn't negotiate. 3 months later, the locks changed before breakfast. The bank finished its ritual, posted a small notice, and listed the Round Rock house as real estate owned. New photos went up online, rooms stripped, walls repainted a bland off-white over the custom colors Liam had spent weekends perfecting. It looked like a memory with the sound turned down. Summit first filed their civil action for the fraud attempt and won costs. 2 card companies followed with suits on balances Sierra ran in Liam's name after my freeze. Together, judgments stacked to roughly $195,000 and came with wage garnishment language that reads like winter. Paper keeps its promises. Liam's credit slid into the high 500s. 7 months into his job, the auto shop ran a routine check and let him go. Risk profile. The manager said, according to a cousin who prefers gossip over groceries. He sent me one last text that ricocheted between apology and accusation. My phone didn't light up. I'd already changed the number. Ruth listed their new Braunfels house late in the summer and took an offer $12,000 under asking just to close. She and Tom moved into a cramped two-bedroom near a busy frontage road where the porch light fights highway glare and loses. Mom still tells friends it's a right sizing. Dad doesn't correct her. He never did. I moved all personal mail to a private P.O. box under a quiet corporate alias. New phones, new two-factor, new habits that feel like clean sheets. No family numbers survive the cut. Sometimes the body reaches for old pain like it's a favorite sweater. I kept my hands busy when that happened. A letter from Tom arrived through my attorney, handwritten, blue ink that wobbled on certain words. He apologized for standing still while the room burned and asked if the four of us could sit down together. I dictated one sentence back. No, it wasn't anger. It was triage. When Austin heat finally eased, I started running at dusk again. The air tasted like metal and cut grass. On the last stretch home, I would picture a search screen that shows public records and refresh it out of habit. The Round Rock address still wore bank-owned like a simple fact. Some truths don't need headlines. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty. Guilt tries to visit. I don't offer it a chair. What do you owe the hand that steals your name and calls it love? I thought about Liam's knee that never stopped bouncing, about Sierra's ring lights pointed at nothing, about my mother's smile holding a party together while the table collapsed. I thought about my father's quiet file, slid under my door like a permission slip to stop pretending. I don't miss the old group chat. I don't miss proving I belong. Peace is louder than both. One afternoon, I stood at my window with coffee cooling in my palm and watched the city move, deliveries, dogs, a cyclist humming to himself. My phone stayed silent. I liked the weight of it. Maybe blood is thicker than water. Boundaries are thicker than both. I set the cup down, opened my laptop, and got back to work. I chose the door. And I kept it closed.